if you could both, introduce yourselves and tell me your names, and then we'll talk about your life here on the Mill Village stuff.
Okay. My name is J.T. Henry Queen. I now reside at Route 2, Box 147, Gaston, NC.
My name is Florine Queen, Henry Queen's wife, and we're living in
Same address.
same address.
Okay. Now you know why I came here to talk about, to try and understand what took place in 1934 in this area, which I know had an awful lot of activity. So if you could tell me a little bit about how your family came to live at Perfection Mills, is that right? Okay.
Well, let me back up just a little bit.
Okay.
Are you recording now?
Yeah, we're recording. You don't want me to?
It's okay. Her daddy was a baseball pitcher too. That's how he was hired to come down here to work. Back then, the mill companies had baseball teams. They supplied their balls, bats, uniforms, and all that, and there was good advertising for them.
My parents lived at Parkdale Mills in Gastonia, and when they decided to start up the mills here in Belmont, Daddy was brought here to help put in the machinery. And he stayed at Perfection Mill, helped put in the machinery, and was section man there for I don't know how many years, for a long time, until he retired from the mill. And he was there during the strike, and he didn't participate in the strike, but his workers did. The people who worked for him in the mill, a lot of them did.
Now, as a section hand, what was your daddy's responsibilities?
He was the boss man over that section. He put the people to work and seen that their work was done right, and he was just what they always called it, the boss man or the supervisor.
What he did when they changed different weights of yarn, he had to change the gears to like from the 60s or 80s or whatever they made, he had to change the gears so that it would draft it to that specification.
He took care of the machinery in that section, and he worked. Most of his hands were women.
It was a spinning section.
Spinning section, and the doffers in the mill were young boys. They were normally the only men in the section he worked in. The people who run the machinery were women.
Now, so was your daddy the supervisor on the Mill Village too?
No, he was just supervisor in the mill. The Mill Village, I guess, was what you'd say was supervised by the superintendent of the mill, which was a Mr. Miller at that time, because he had the authority of the people on the Mill Village. He had the authority to fire them, move them off, and hire them for the Mill Village, for the people in the houses.
And now you didn't come from the same mill village that Florine did you?
No, I lived in East Gastonia. I lived on the Flint Mill Village. And the day the strike was called, the very next day, a friend and I, we started coming to Washington to try to get us a job.
There wasn't any trouble at the Flint mills in Gastonia.
They were shut down anyway.
They just weren't running because of the Depression. And but where most of the activity was at the Firestone mill in Gastonia and the Belmont mills.
Why in Belmont? Why was Belmont such a focus of activity?
Well, we really don't know unless they organized more union activity in the textile mills. And that's all there was in Belmont, was textile mills.
Well, Gaston County alone was only textiles. About the only business that was here. It was called the Diversified City of Textiles. It was of the world. At that time, there was 100 and somewhat, 17, 18, 28 mills in Gaston County at that time. And that was practically the only industry that was here.
And there was two families that owned the mills in Belmont, the Linebergers and the Stows.
They owned all the mills.
They owned all the mills at that time, the Linebergers and the Stows.
Now, what were the names of the textile mills in Belmont?
Well, there was the Perfection, the Lintford, the Stow Spinning, the Acme
1 and 2.
Acme 1 and 2, the Chronicle, the Crescent, Majestic, Climax, Aberfoyle,
Eagle,
South
Fork.
Piedmont. That's all I can think of right now. But
Imperial.
Yeah, the Imperial.
Can't remember.
It was just a whole section of textile plants.
And did each one of those have a mill village connected
Yes.
to it?
Yes.
Each one of them had a mill village connected. And the mill villages participated in sports. I'd say the Perfection and Lintford had a baseball team. They played the Stowe and the Acme, or National, that was another mill. They played the other mills.
Majestic,
Baseball.
Eagle.
That's all there were here, was just cotton mills, textiles.
Now, both of you had parents who were section hands. Is that right?
I was a section hand also.
You were a section hand.
After I
also.
came to Belmont in the
Okay.
Perfection.
So you worked in
I was
Perfection
in
too.
Yes. Yes. After we were married, I was a section hand in the carding department.
Now, a section hand, that's a good job, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
We went to school.
over certain mills, over certain people.
I presume it was the Linebergers and the Stows put the textile school on Wilson Boulevard. They started that, and I went there the first year it was open. And after I did that, bookwork,
Yeah,
things that you needed to know to be a supervisor, I was taught that there.
there's a textile school in Belmont.
Is it still working?
It's
Yes.
still working, and they
Mhm.
have a lot of foreigners come in learning textiles.
Huh.
It's still in operation.
Now, you were 15 years old in 1934,
Mm-hmm.
and you were the daughter of a section hand.
Right.
So I'm sure your father had some real feelings about what was going on at the time.
Oh, sure, he had feelings about it.
Can you talk about that?
Well,
How you remember it?
all I remember is that I hate to say this, was against the union. He did not participate in any union activities at all.
Why do you hate to say it?
Well, it's just that the union people,
He
The people-
thought the people were being taken that were
yeah, he
coerced into joining the union.
he didn't believe in what the union was promising the people. So
And-
he didn't have anything to do with it.
And the union did not abide by what they promised the people. They did not feed them. They did not pay them. They did not pay for their medicine.
Now, your father, he was in management, right? Your daddy was.
Yes.
And your daddy was too.
Yes.
So if the union came in, they wouldn't have been able to participate anyway,
No,
right?
they
Or would they have been
couldn't.
able
Well,
to?
They tried to get them to
The-
join,
the-
but they wouldn't.
The
because they were
organizers
managed.
tried to get them to join.
Really?
And a lot of time, some of the organizers signed cards for people who did not join. Who
At Perfection.
they signed cards and turned them in, but for people who they didn't sign the card themselves. It was a big thing at that time. 'Cause-
See, they didn't get enough of names to call for a vote, and they voted the union in, but yet the mills did not sign a contract with them.
This was at Perfection.
yeah.
That didn't happen at all the mills, I suppose.
Probably did.
I think it was voted in. I think it was voted in at the Lintford. It was voted in that some of the Lineberger mills. I say that because that was the ones we worked for. But the Linebergers never would acknowledge it or never signed a contract with them. They just let it ride.
They didn't recognize the union.
They didn't recognize any of their activities or anything.
Now you started to talk about the people that did want to join, the workers that did want to join the union, and before you were telling me those that didn't have it as good as you did were the ones that they targeted. Was that right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I guess you'd say the poorer families on the mill village. Families who had a lot of kids and just couldn't get along too good. They were the ones they went after.
One that didn't have enough income to feed them good.
And the ones that didn't have an education, and just the lower class of people is the ones that mostly went after.
The underprivileged.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was this in public? Did people know what was going on, or was it secret?
Well, now the union meetings, they weren't what we'd call secret because everybody that belongs to the union could go to the meetings. But the ones who didn't belong to the union, they didn't know what was going on at the meetings.
They couldn't go.
See,
You couldn't go unless you were.
you couldn't
showed
go
your
unless
card
you
that
had
were
a
member. You
union
couldn't get
card.
in.
Uh-huh.
You couldn't get in to the meeting unless you showed your membership card.
Now, was this all over, or was this is what you know about perfection?
This is what I know about perfection.
Well, the same thing happened in East Gastonia, where I was living.
Now, where did they have these meetings?
They would meet at different people's houses, different houses on the. And at one time there was an old abandoned. That was a store building, wasn't it? There on
In the second story, outside the schoolhouse.
It was an old abandoned store, and then it was a church, an old church, wasn't it? There on
School
Acme Road.
Street. I'm talking about School Street, where Struth's Grocery was at one time.
I'm
Upstairs
talking
there.
about the old building there that was
Oh.
on. I don't think you even remember. It was an old store building there, and then it was church there, and they had a lot of meetings in it.
In the church.
It was a store
They
building to start
abandoned
with
it.
years ago, and then I think one of the churches started up
Now,
there.
did they do this for a long time before the strike? Was it active for many months before September 1934, or?
Wasn't long in Gastonia
It wasn't too long.
till they called the strike. I'd say maybe 2 months
Maybe
at the
2
most.
months at the most.
Maybe from July the 4th to September the Labor Day, whatever day of the week it
That
came
they
on.
called
It came on a
strike.
Monday, but I don't know what the date was. I don't
I think it was
that.
I think it was September 1st,
I think it was.
Labor Day.
I think it's September 1st, I recall. Because your birthday was on the 5th, on Friday that first week.
They
Okay.
it didn't last too awfully long. I mean, the people were, when they started organizing, they really went after it.
And how did it affect you in any way? I mean, did you hear talk? How did you know about what was going on?
The only way it affected me was that a lot of my friends, their parents, say joined the union, and they weren't allowed to associate with me. And if we were seen out in public or anywhere, and some of them come around, they called us scabs. And just
Now, you weren't
Very.
working in the mill, were you?
at that time, no, I wasn't old enough to go to work in the mill
So why did they call you a scab?
because my family didn't belong to the union.
Just like that.
Right.
So what happened? Now, when your father came home after a hard day's of work, what was he talking about? I mean, how did management deal with the beginnings of this organizing prior to this big strike?
Well, all he would talk about was say they tried to get me to sign a card. That's what they'd say. They tried to get me to sign a card, or he'd laugh about it. Or he really didn't get angry about it. He didn't get angry at anybody about it, over it.
Actually, he felt sorry for some of them that joined it. He knew it, they were being taken in, or he felt that way.
No, he never. He didn't get angry at all at anybody.
Who were the people that came? Who were the organizers?
I don't remember. I really don't
remember
remember
who
who
they
they were. Now this, lady I sent you about, she
Yeah.
could probably tell you who the organizers were.
Were they people you think that were from inside the community or outside the community?
No, they were outside the
They were
community.
sent in here.
They were sent in here. They were not
They were not local people.
not local people,
They weren't even from the state, I don't believe. I don't believe they were in the state.
but they weren't local people. The organizers weren't.
Do you,
And they only came in the nights they had their meetings.
they didn't live here.
They didn't live here, and they didn't hang around on the village at any time.
I see. But there must have been some people within the community that became community leaders. So would you say so? I mean, people from inside perfection that became.
Yeah,
The
there
leaders
were
of the
people
union.
in the mill who became more active in signing people up. That's what they call them. They signed union cards.
And you remember Vern Farmer being one of the.
Yeah. And I guess she's the only one I remember
I don't believe it.
now.
Now,
But I do know that she was active in.
now, do you remember once the strike was called? I know that I've seen pictures of the National Guard coming into Belmont, and a lot of activity. So I wonder if you could tell me what you remember seeing.
There was not any what we'd call activity at the mill at our mill village. There was not any conflict of any kind at the mill village. When
No
the
National Guard.
when the National Guard was called in was when they started down in East Belmont. When they started having trouble down there at the hosier mill.
At the hatch.
Hatch hosier.
So what was the atmosphere like here at your mill?
Well, most of the people who belonged to the union, they went down there to where the action was.
Down to the hatch.
Go see what was going on.
Did they?
I was in school at that time, and I started down there after school the day that the man got killed. But my daddy caught me, and he sent me back home. I had to walk home because the bus had already gone run, and I was going to walk down there with some of my friends. You know, we knew all the activity was going on down there every afternoon, but I didn't get down there. Daddy sent me home. He was a deputy, and he was in one of the cars.
Now, what was your daddy's responsibility as a deputy?
Well, all I know he did was rode in the automobile with the machine gun.
Wow.
That's all I know.
All I can think of, I guess his responsibility was to try to stop any rioting and anything going on, you know, to
Try to
Make peace if
try
they
to
could.
keep from being so much trouble.
Now, what was his route? Did he just stay at proximity, right? That's perfection. What was the name of your mill?
Perfection.
perfection, but
Did he just stay at perfection?
No,
no,
they called him in anywhere that they were
when they
expecting.
needed any trouble.
They called him in from Belmont, from the city hall in Belmont, anywhere they were expecting trouble. They called in their deputies. He was only a deputy at that time.
So he was
And
busy.
they sent them to the other places where they were expecting trouble.
So he was busy for those 2 weeks, I suppose.
He was busy.
Was he gone all the time?
Well, no, he wouldn't be gone every day all the time, but they said call him. They'd call him of a morning light, and he'd be out till late at night. He would just be. They would be riding around, you know, where they thought maybe they may be having some trouble. Patrolling.
Now, I've seen pictures of what they call the flying squadrons, the strikers that would go from one mill to another.
Oh yeah, they would.
Do you remember that?
They would gang up in gangs and get somebody with a big truck. They'd pile up in these trucks and go from one mill to another one to start something or see what was going on.
That's the one thing that I saw that the union paid for at the Flint Rose Mills. They had the people that had the cars and trucks come in the service station, and they'd buy them some gas. I believe it's 5 gallons of gas each car, and they paid for it. And that's the only thing I saw the union pay out
For
to
them
the
to go
people.
somewhere.
To go somewhere and cause some trouble, try to close a mill down.
Yeah, they would go to mills. I think they went to mills in South Carolina, trying to, close them down.
Well, at one time they were going to Annapolis too, but
Yeah.
I recall it was in the paper, and that was a week that Dave and I was coming to Washington, and we stopped in Annapolis. We knew a family that lived at the Flint, and they took us in, fed us that night, and bedded us down, fed us our breakfast. And on the way back, we stopped there too for 2 days. And one of the Annapolis men or relatives of the Cannons had an airplane, and he'd go up every morning and watch for the line of cars coming. And they had machine guns on top of their mills, because I saw them. And they had them manned.
Plant 1, that big plant.
In Cannon
Canap-
Mills,
the
I
Cannon
could,
Mills
ones
in
that you could
Kannapolis.
see from the highway at that
Yeah.
time.
They had a lot of activity at the Cannon Mills, but they didn't have any trouble. I mean, people would go up there, but they had those mills policed. They had people with shotguns or cannons or anything on top of the mill. Nobody ever tried to any trouble at the mill. They
They
would
went up there
probably
and
do it around the
nobody was brave
villages.
enough to be first to go in and try to stop it.
In Annapolis.
Yeah.
See, how did you know so much about Annapolis? You living over
Well,
here.
I told you I was there.
You were there.
See, it called on Monday. On a Tuesday, David and I started thumbing to Washington. And we got as far as Annapolis, and we stopped in to see these friends that used to live there. And they invited us to spend the night with them. We did.
Did you go down to the mill to see what was going on?
You could see it from the highway.
I think
Wow. So you really were witnesses to all of this.
to what was going on our mill village.
Now, what happened to your mill village? Now, were there people picketing at Perfection? I mean, were there people that were stationed outside the mill?
No, after they closed the mill down, nobody tried to get back in. After they stopped when the owners just stopped the mills, nobody tried to enter it or go back in or anything.
So I guess there was no reason for the pickets to stand outside.
No, they just had their meetings and would go to these other mills where they probably thought they was going to have some trouble or something.
Did they ever try to persuade? Did they ever try and have negotiations with the mill owners at Perfection, or try and talk to them about unionizing, or talk to them about what they wanted?
I don't know about talking to the mill owners and all that, but I know they did the employees in the mill. I don't know how they carried on with the owners and the superintendents and things like that.
Now, so was your daddy a deputy also? Even though he was a section hand, he wasn't a deputy. So so how long did all this? How long was your daddy a deputy? Was he there for the duration of this?
Well, let's see. About 6 weeks?
Something like that.
They didn't deputize any of them until they started having some trouble at some of the mills or somewhere in some of the villages.
Well, that happened the first week. When Riley got killed.
No, it didn't happen the first week.
No, it wasn't. The second week, because school didn't start till after that.
It was after school started.
So now, the family's name was Riley, the boy who got killed in Belmont. Could you tell me as much of that story as you know about?
Well, I really don't know too much about it except that he was bayoneted on a porch down there. Because I wasn't there, and of course I wasn't but 15 years old, and I really don't remember what was in the papers. But there was a lot of written up in the papers.
And a lot of talk, I'm sure.
This-
Oh, yes, a lot of talk.
I can tell you what I heard,
Yeah,
and it says, so this is second hand,
yeah.
that this man that got killed, Riley, was taunting one of the National Guardsmen.
Yeah.
And I guess he got tired of it, and he started after him with his bayonet, and the man run up on the porch, and he went on up there after him and bayoneted him and killed him.
No, it wasn't his home where he got. It was somebody else's home that.
Yeah.
It
he
was a
got-
house in front of Hatch Hosiery.
And it wasn't his home, He just run up on a house in front of the mill there.
Now, I actually have a picture of the inside of that house where he was.
Where he was killed.
Yeah, which I'll show to you.
Yeah.
I guess it was something that the news photographers took pictures of.
Oh, yeah, there was they were photographers everywhere.
So Belmont was jumping.
Yeah, Belmont was jumping because they knew they were going to have trouble at Hatch Hosiery that day.
See, the hosiery mills paid 2 and 3 times as much as regular cotton mills, their wages. So people wanted to work. They made good money. Back then, that was real good money. See, when most of the people, unless you did piecework, were making 30 cents an hour, they were making 60, 75, 90 cents an hour. That was excellent money back then.
Yeah,
So they
and-
wanted to work. That's the reason they had the trouble at Hatch Hosiery. Those people that had jobs and they wanted to work, but the other people tried to stop them, keep them from working. They wanted to shut all textile down.
Yeah, there's a lot of hosiery mills in Belmont too, but the Linebergers owned them.
No, so why was it different than at Belmont? Why did people not try to go into work at Belmont?
They just closed the mills down.
They
and-
closed the mill down. In
The owners just-
essence, the owner just told them not to try to come to work. They wasn't going to until
They
this
wasn't.
blew over.
They just closed the mills down.
And how did those folks that didn't go to work, did they get paid?
No,
So nobody got
nobody
paid.
got paid. Mm-mm.
So how do people feel about the people who had joined the union and who had gone out on strike since they couldn't, was there a lot of resentment towards them because they lost
Yes,
their
Some of it
There was-
carried over for a few years.
Some of it carried over for years. Some of the resentment to some of the people because they were talked about it so much. I mean, they were pushing it, and so there was a lot of resentment to some of them. And some of them lost their jobs, but you couldn't say they lost their jobs because of the union because they couldn't fire them because of that. But eventually, a lot of them lost their jobs.
Over the next several years.
Would you say most of them lost their jobs?
A lot of them,
A
not
lot
all
of
of them.
I wouldn't say most of them did. A lot of them lost their jobs, and they didn't
But it's
lose
for
their
other
jobs. They didn't
reasons.
lose their jobs because of the union. They lost their jobs because of other reasons.
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah,
And then they had to leave the village.
yeah. They had to move.
So were there folks that
Let me tell you this. In the twister room, the Dolphers there, they didn't work 2 hours a day, and they're getting paid for 8. And sometimes, some of them would get another to do their work, wouldn't even come in on Monday, and would get paid for 8 hours, and they were the one that joined the union. And they wasn't doing any work, but they're still getting paid for it.
the Doffers?
Yes. Because they didn't do that much work.
Now, who did do all the work that joined the union? Spinners.
Well,
in the
now-
mill, the women had the hardest work.
Yeah, the women had the hardest work in the mills. The men, just talking about these doffers, they would get another doffer to do their job. But the job was done, so they got paid for it.
They wouldn't even come in, but still got paid.
And
And
we,
they's the one that joined the union. That's what I couldn't understand. That's what her daddy couldn't understand. They'd lay out, and some of them would do their work for them, and they got paid for it. But yet they had joined the union.
now, did they become the most outspoken leaders, the Doffers?
No, I think some of the women were the most outspoken
Really?
leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some of the women were.
Now, that must have really been challenging something back then. I mean, were women, did you find it surprising that the women came out as most outspoken leaders?
Well, I was surprised that the women took as active a part as they did.
Now, in my opinion, the women, as I said earlier, they had the hardest job. They had to work 8 hours. Now, they got, what, 2 10-minute break and 1:20, something like that, during the day. And they had the hardest job, and they should have been paid more. But the men as a whole, like even before I was a section man, I run speeders. My work didn't take me about 2.5 hours a day. But I was there. You had to be there to watch it, keep it from tearing up, something like that. But actual work, 2.5 hours a day I was doing, but I was getting paid for 8.
Now, at that time, were you working in the mill when it was 10 hours before it went to 8 hours?
I worked part-time when it was 11 hours. Not 10, it was 11, where we lived at Flint. Went in at 6, got off from 12 for lunch, and went back at 1, worked 6. And then the people worked at night had 12 hours. They had to work from 6 till 6, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Oops.
Mill. You see the water tank.
That's not Belmont? Okay,
No, that's not Firestone. Firestone's 7 stories high, Florine.
that's right. Isn't that Hatch?
This is,
Turn around. That may be Hatch.
South, no, that says on that tank, what, that's South Fork Manufacturing Company, downtown. Up here's the crossroads, Florine. That's Wilson Boulevard. Hatch Hosiery.
Yeah.
And that's this part up here, that's the South Fork Manufacturing Company.
There's a description on the back here. National Guardsmen hold off strikers at Hatch Hosiery Mill.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember seeing the National Guard sleeping
No,
in
I
tents?
left
You
that
were in
first
Washington.
day. I didn't get there. We just got to Danville, Virginia. Spent a couple of nights there, and we came back. We got a hobo in. So Dave and I, our train came in and stopped. Somebody told us what to do, to get there better instead of thumbing, because it's taking so long to get there thumbing. And so we walked along the railroad till we found the empty boxcar. By the time Dave said, "Here comes somebody, might be a railroad detective." So there was some steps that led down to the highway. So we just sat down around the steps, come up, and boy, he was a railroad detective. Here, you're on railroad property, you're blankety blank off of here. And he drew a gun on us. Boy, don't you know, I got down that highway as quick as I could.
I remember when they called people scabs.
Now, which mill is this? This isn't yours.
No.
That's down Belmont East End.
Do any of these folks look familiar?
That's where your daddy run you back from when you
Yeah.
was going down there from school from Knit
Yeah.
Products.
That's-
That's a hosiery mill
Yeah.
too.
That's where you were trying to go?
Just trying
Yeah.
to go, and he caught me sitting
Well,
there.
that's where the man got killed down there in Knit. It wasn't in Hatch.
Yeah. This is a view of the plant of the Knit Products Corporation, showing the Lay residence across the street. This was the scene of the riot on September 18th, in which several persons, including one from the Lay house, were bayoneted.
Yeah, this is this.
Is this the porch that the person ran onto?
That's the house. This is the mill,
That's Knit Products.
and that's the house I
That's
guess that he ran
two-story
onto. I don't.
About 2 or 3 houses below that is where Neil's
that's the Lay
family.
house, where he was the Lay residence. That's where
Did
he
you
went
know the
on.
Lay family?
No.
It's the same picture.
That's inside the house where
Right.
he was killed. Does it give any of these people's names?
I think so. It says C.W. Knight in group kneeling. Speaker for the Textile Union Local 1900 is shown in the kitchen of the Lay home when he examined the blood-spattered floor following the riot on September 18th, in which a member of the Lay household was bayoneted. So that's somebody. That's
Well, wait a minute. A member of the Lay household was bayoneted. He was not a Lay. The
Well, they
man-
could have been, some of them was bayoneted, but just one died.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
Riley's the one that
'cause they
died.
did have they had a riot. And Riley's the one that died.
So C.W. Knight. Does that ring a bell?
Not with me,
No, me either.
Okay, now here's some more local folks. So you knew John Carpenter.
I knew him at sight, was all. When I saw him, because he was a solicitor in Gaston County for a long time.
Solicitor meaning?
My daddy knew him quite well, but I didn't.
What was his job?
He was solicitor of Gaston County, the DA.
So he was a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Let me see any other names in there.
This
She
is,
might have to
again,
recognize
Mr.
some of
Lay
them.
in blue suit, questioned by Solicitor General.
And G. Lay, that, I don't think that would have been Red Lay's family.
Well, they got Carpenter, right? That's not Carpenter. This is John Carpenter. You see back here on the being questioned by Solicitor John Carpenter, right?
Well, it's right of him. It's
Yeah,
right of
right of him.
him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Uh-huh. I thought maybe they meant this man. I don't know who this is, but that's John Carpenter. Yeah. Well, they still do it. I saw it in the paper where they call people scabs now.
Mrs. J.W. Ingle and Mrs. James Cloninger, both of this textile manufacturing town, shown leaving a local strike relief station laden with bundles of food supplied by the textile union.
It's called the strike.
Right. Do either of those women look familiar?
Would that be a lot of food to feed a family?
No, it's not a lot of food.
I know some of them said they got sacks of potatoes and.
As far as I know, they didn't get anything in East Gastonia. I don't know any of these.
Military Guard Station. Plant of knit products. And here it shows the man with the bayonet, doesn't it? Somewhere.
Oh, no,
Is the knit products mill still standing?
yes. Mm-hmm.
Did you know
It's
any
still up
people
there.
that worked there?
At one time, her brother-in-law did. Her sister's husband worked there, Neil.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, they in Florida.
In Florida. He wasn't working there at that time.
No, he wasn't working there at that time. Huh? He was too young.
This is where the National Guard camped out.
Right. This is I guess this is another view of the Lay house.
Yeah, in the mill. And you can,
On this
Yeah.
service station, that was the dry cleaner plant. And then Knit Products was next building. What was the name of that dry cleaner? This was not Knit Products. That is the dry cleaning plant. What did who used to pick up our dry cleaning? He worked.
no, I knew, I think
Blanche's
his
cousin or what?
cousin or niece or something. I knew a girl that was, she was my age, that was a relative of the Rileys.
No, was
And
had he was a striker, I suppose, Riley. Or was he?
I don't know.
I don't know. I really
He
don't know
probably-
whether he was.
He was a striker. He may have been a union member. I don't know.
How did the town deal with this death? I mean, this must have been just a horrible thing.
Well, I was so young till I really don't remember too much about it, except that it was a big thing at that time because I guess it's the first death or first person killed in the strike. And it was a big thing in Mount Holly, Belmont.
Did that turn that must have how did the community respond to that? Did they say, enough with this is horrible, the union brought this on, or
Well, I wasn't down here at that time. See, I moved down here in '35. It was about a year and 3 months after the strike.
I don't
Really
remember
moving.
the reaction, but I think it was quieted down a lot after that happened. But I really don't remember the community reaction. I was just too young to remember it.
I don't, there wasn't any up there in East Gaston. I don't recall of anything. In fact, I don't remember anybody ever calling me a scab. My daddy didn't belong. He didn't join it because he was a supervisor. And it wasn't so rough up there. The only thing, like I told you about that man that organized there at the Groves Mill in Bobster.
No, you, actually, what? Could you tell me again? Yeah.
This at the first week of the strike, Bob Stowe was a truck driver for the Groves textile plant, and they had some yarn to deliver. And this organizer of the union got some people together, said we're going to stop him and let him come out the gate. But Earl Groves, who owned the mill, had two men deputized, and he gave them guns, and they got on. At that time, the trucks had running boards on each side of the cab, and one stood on one side with his gun in his hand, one stood on the other with his hand, and they came, one of them got off and unlocked the gate to open it. That organizer, he backed away and left, and they pulled out of that yarn, and so didn't much happen after that. They quieted
Well,
down.
nothing really happened on Perfection Village in Lentford down that side. It was all mostly downtown.
But Perfection did try to have an election even after all
They
of this.
did have an election. Yeah, and the union won.
Was there a celebration on the part of the workers?
All I remember is they said it's coming out the mill saying we won, we won. That's all I remember.
What did
But-
Daddy think?
He never did comment.
I don't think he ever voiced his opinion on it. I don't recall it. I mean, afterwards, talking to him about it, I wasn't here at that time, but they, after that mill company put the fence up,
Yeah, they
Perfection,
put a
they didn't
fence
have a
up around
fence
there.
before then.
They put a fence up around the mill right then.
After their election
After,
or after the strike,
after the strike.
they put a fence up.
Mhm.
That's actually kind of common. I've seen.
Yeah, a lot of the mills did.
No, why do you think? Do you think it took a lot of courage on the part of the workers to try and organize here?
I think it took a lot of nerve for somebody to come in and start. But after they started, they knew which families to go to. They knew which families.
As they got started, they knew the ones that were dissatisfied. And that's the ones they went to.
Now I know that a lot of people have talked about the working conditions at that time had gotten real difficult because of the stretch out.
Well, that's what I was speaking about earlier, about the women had the hardest job, the men's.
Yeah, the
Wasn't
women
not
had the
that
hardest
hard.
jobs in the mill. The men didn't. Men didn't have hard jobs in the mill. The women's one. The women's is the one that did the work.
And then they had to come home and take care of their
Then
family.
they had to come home, take care of their families. And
So it's not in all communities. I mean, you're one of the first people that has said that the women took the most outspoken role.
well, they did that there. At Perfection, the women were the ones who were more outspoken than the men.
Did you actually see them standing outside and talking, or giving speeches, or what did
No,
you just
I never
heard?
did see any of their activities at all. But I knew they had meetings, but we weren't told what they did or what. Only thing we knew was they was going to have a strike. They just closed the mill down.
And they closed it down before the strike.
The owners closed it
The
down the
owners
day it was
closed it down
called.
the
The
day
day
the strike was called.
Because see, they had informed the owners that they were gonna close it down Labor Day, which was, I think it was the first day of September that year. No, it was the first Monday. I believe it was the first day of September also. I don't remember for sure, but I believe it was.
Now, I have pictures kneeling.
Mm-hmm.
Her daddy's daddy.
What did he do at the Parkdale? Did he work there?
I don't know what he did. I guess he
When
did work in it.
He worked there when I knew him. He had retired, but he was a watchman on the weekends. You
Yeah,
know,
he's
your
watching.
grandpa was.
But his children all worked there. All of them. There was 9 children, and they all worked there.
Are any of them alive?
Oh yeah, his children. He's got 1, 2,
And
3
Will,
sisters.
Bama, and Thelma, and Clarence.
Clarence.
4 of them still
There's
alive.
4 of them still
Are
alive.
do they live in the area too?
They live in Gaston.
Were they working there at that time? You think?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
The older
I'm
ones
sure
were.
the older ones were.
Now I guess this is the Parkdale in Gastonia.
It looks like Parkdale.
Yeah, it says Gastonia, and it's certainly the park. In fact, I have movie footage of the same thing.
It looks like the Parkdale mill. Did then. They don't any of them look like that
Must be the
now.
organizer standing up there, probably.
His name was Albert Henson.
I didn't know him. The man that organized strike at the Firestone Lowry Mill in '29 was Red Putman.
Red Putman.
That was in '29, though. That's when the Chief Adderhope got killed.
Did you know him, Red Putman? You were a boy. You were just a boy.
No, I didn't know him.
Now, do you think that a lot of people were nervous about 29? I mean, were even more nervous about 34 because of what had happened in 29?
I would think so, but I don't recall it too well.
These are the Union.
They were apprehensive of what possibly could happen, that there could be more killings, you know.
This is
Downtown
the Labor Day
Gaston.
parade in Gastonia
Gastonia.
that day. Now, would it make sense for people from Belmont to go to a parade in Gastonia? Would they do that, or would that be too far?
Oh yeah, they would go. I mean, it's really not that far.
So, if this lady, if this woman Vern was real active, she might have gone down there to be part of that parade. You think?
I
really
really,
don't know.
I really wouldn't know.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it wasn't too far.
It wouldn't be too far for them to go to the parade.
No, I guess this is in Gastonia too.
But the owners resisted. See, and the union didn't. The owners resisted the strikers and workers, and the union didn't do what they said they'd do. They hadn't been organized long enough to accumulate enough money to feed the people. So in my opinion, that's what broke it up.
You think otherwise the workers would have been able to hold out longer?
Yeah, if they'd unionized for a year or so and got some money in the treasury where they could have fed them, they may have won. But they tried to pull it too quick. Now, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Did you ever talk to any folks? Were there any of your contemporaries or older brothers and sisters of your friends that you talked to who had joined, who had actually gone out and tried?
None of mine did.
None. Wasn't old enough to know anything about talking about it. All I heard was what I would hear, you know, and I didn't know enough to even talk about it because I was too young.
And I too, although I was 18 years old, I wasn't old enough to realize the significance of what could happen or what would happen. It just didn't dawn on me. I didn't, you know, I'd never been through anything like that, and I just didn't know what it meant. I really didn't.
When you say what it meant, what do you mean?
That it meant for the people what would be in the future for them.
If the union came in,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think? Do you think it all would have been very different here?
I don't think that the mill companies would have ever recognized the union.
I don't
I
think so.
think
They would have shut
I
down.
think they would have closed the mills
Because
down.
they were wealthy enough that they didn't have to operate them.
So I don't think
If
that
the
they were.
people, if that's what they want, Let them get them a job and feed themselves. And that's just my opinion now. I don't know if they thought that or not.
Now, when you were working as a section hand all these other years, did they ever try to organize again? Never? Not since 34 around here?
No, they never. They tried the one time, but they never did try anymore.
See, now, Firestone voted in last year, wasn't it? And the year before, when Mike, my nephew, tried to organize it, he didn't get it organized, and they lost on that vote. Then somebody else came in the next year, and they won.
Yeah, Firestone voted it in a couple of years ago.
Now, what was it like to? How do you feel about what Mike does? Was that a big shock?
Years ago, now when they tried to organize, they really needed it. But today, I don't think they need the union with all the benefits that the people get today. Because the majority of them have, I say the majority, I think the majority of them pay the hospitalization bills, at least 50% of it. Because I know I worked for an insurance company one time, and they will not insure unless the owners pay at least 50% of the premiums. And they got retirement now. They have pretty good retirement.
Low rent.
Low rent housing.
Now?
Yes. And so now I really don't think they need it. But they did back then, but they went about it the wrong way and tried to pull it off too quick. It was just poor judgment on my way I see it.
Yeah. Why do you think they needed it back then?
Well, as I said earlier, they needed to prolong it a long time before they pulled the strike. Because they pulled it too soon before they had any capital in the treasury to keep their promises to the people.
What did the people think? Do you have any idea what the people thought they were going to, what the union, what the local people here, not the outsiders, but the local people, what did you think they thought they were going to accomplish?
They thought they were going to get more wages, higher wages, more benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's what they expected. And then when they didn't get it, they were disappointed. And that's the reason, in my opinion, it's been hard. North Carolina is the least organized state in the union. And that's the reason it's been hard to organize since then, because they didn't know. So many people remember that. Now, these younger generations remember the 34, just like our children have heard us talk about it. And
have
they know
you talked
what it
about
was.
it?
No, I mean, they know. Not like we have.
Right.
Today, not like we have today, but they know that we have told them what happened and what didn't happen, that there was a strike, and that the reason we were against it because they didn't do what they said they would do. And like I said earlier, it just wasn't planned right. It just wasn't carried out right. They tried to do it too quick.
I think it would be hard to organize a union in any of the textile plants in Belmont.
Today.
Mm-hmm. Now, since Parkdale Mills have bought out the Lineberger mills, I don't know how they feel about it. But as long as the Linebergers owned the mills, they would never have been a union.
They had been a union, but they never got a contract.
I mean, they'd never recognized union.
So once they didn't get their contract, what happened to this local here in Belmont? Do you know?
Well, they went back to work on their jobs.
Oh, you mean
I mean, when they had an election
Mm-hmm.
and they got their union in.
they were supposed to have?
They were supposed to have it, and they were never recognized.
They never recognized it. The Linebergers would have closed the mills down before they.
Before they would have signed a contract, they would have.
Did they make threats like that? Or
No,
you
when
just knew
people
that?
you knew they wouldn't recognize. When they wouldn't sign a contract, you knew they wouldn't recognize them. So what was the use? You had to eat, you had to live. You may as well go back to work for them.
So there were a lot of people then at that mill that were very open about their participation and their wanting to vote it in, or was it still? It was. I know an election is secret.
Yeah,
Well,
it was.
As she said earlier, they expected more. They expected better wages and better benefits, and they didn't get them. And like I've said 2 or 3 times, that if the union would have carried out their promises to feed the people, they could have probably won a contract. It'd have been a whole lot stronger.
I guess I'm understanding that they had this election months after this strike. I guess they had it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They had immediately after the strike.
No,
No, it was
no, it was a
Election
while
before
after
the
that.
strike. See, that's when they voted to strike, before the strike.
The unions one had the election to vote to
See,
strike.
they
Right.
voted.
But the election in the mill
Right, that's what
was
I'm
held
talking about.
a year or more longer.
So those folks had all gone back to work
Yeah.
after the strike, and then a year later they had this
They
election.
just kept drumming it up a little bit, you know, building it up a little bit more and a little bit more till they thought they had enough employees to carry the union.
And that must have been done by local people.
Yeah,
That
That
couldn't
wasn't-
have been done by outsiders.
the organizers. It was done by local employees.
And was that? Do you think that was a secret or that was public? That whole year that they tried to do that.
Well, everybody knew that they were trying to do it, to get it done.
And then a year after that election, a lot of those folks left the mill.
Yeah.
Were they ever rehired? Some of them?
Not that I know of.
They just left.
They just left. Moved away.
You never saw them again.
No.
That must have been sad.
They just moved off the mill village, went somewhere else and got them another job. You could get a job then. Get a job anywhere.
Well, I remember, Ed Tucker, he was strong in it to perfection, till me.
Yeah.
And then his boy, Melvin went to work over there with your brother Jack at Sadiqa.
Yeah, they left the mills and went.
The children
Other
went
places.
to other work, different type. Didn't go to the textile
And
industry.
So the parents left, and then their children went and
Grew
got.
up and did other things.
Do you know where any of those folks went to? Did you keep in touch with any of them? Mr. Tucker.
Well, he died many years ago, and I don't know where he went to. Do you?
No. I was just really too young to remember too much about it.
Well, I think you remember an awful lot. I'm going to confirm this with you.
What-
You remember an awful lot.
Like I said earlier, I didn't realize the significance of what could happen or what would happen. And I was older than she was, and I don't think she understood it either. It was just something different, excitement. Reason she wanted to go down there.
I was just a high
and
school
there's a guard
student,
and
Everything
go
was
down-
excited.
that was something. This was a dull place. Hadn't anything like that had ever happened before. All it was, summertime baseball game, that's all you go to. They didn't have anything else to do unless, like she said about her daddy, and I did, after we were married, he took me. We fished in the summertime, hunted, and fished in the summertime, and hunted in the winter, and we played ball in the summertime.
That was it.
That was it. There was nothing else to do. The women didn't have anything to do.
There's no kind of activities for
No
young
clubs
people.
or
Nothing.
The mill didn't provide clubs or anything like that.
The best thing that happened when Bill Farr, he was Robert Lee Stowe's son-in-law. He became the superintendent down at Linford Mill. In 1939, he, and I know they helped him over both the McAdmiral mills. It had been closed down for years. It was called the scum of Gaston County, no work. He bought that for $1 million in 39. I expect it's worth $300 million today or more.
Oh.
He built that up. He straightened up them houses. He put in baths. He gave them vacation. He built parks. He built swimming pools, ball grounds.
Recreation halls.
Yeah, he was the man that all of them needed to be.
No, none of those other mill villages were like that.
They would support a baseball team, but that was all. They didn't do anything for anybody else. See, when
We
you
had a ball field
you had
where they played ball. That was it.
2 or 3, 4 or 5% of your help is all that got any benefit. Those ones that played ball, the rest of them didn't get anything, nothing.
There's nothing for the young people to do. Nothing, no kind of activities for young people.
It's surprising to hear because I've heard so many stories of the mill providing, a certain kind of social welfare to their community, and
Well, they didn't in Belmont.
but they provided you with housing.
Oh yes, we had housing and utilities. But as far as it's like a park or something for the young people, nothing.
Did you grow up feeling very loyal towards this particular mill?
Oh yes, it was my background. My parents came from Parkdale to Perfection, and I grew up there. We lived there after we was married. In fact, we lived there till we moved up here, and we left there before Parkdale bought Perfection.
Now, when did you start working in the mill?
When I was 16.
So 1935 you started.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your job?
Wait a minute, I worked before I was married. I went to school in the morning and worked in the afternoons.
What year was that? In 34?
34. Mm-hmm.
Was that after the strike or before?
That
It
was
was
after
after.
the strike. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I was in high school and I left high school at 1 o'clock and came home, went to work at 2.
What was the work like for you?
I was what they call a spooler hand at that time. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed working. Of course, now I had to work. We had to work hard, but they weren't. The mills had sort of gotten a little bit lenient towards their help. After that, they weren't so. Now you go in the mill at 6 o'clock and you stay in that mill till 2 o'clock. You get your 2. I guess they still get breaks. I don't know. But then at that time, I went to work. Sometimes I'd go in at 5 o'clock. I'd come home and fix breakfast for the kids. Go back and work till 2 o'clock. They weren't. Of course, I worked on production, and I didn't have to. I wasn't tied to my job 8 solid hours a day till after the strike. After the strike, they sort of clamped down on them.
Well, let me interject this about her work.
Yeah.
There was a man from a manufacturing company came down that mill trying to sell them automatic spoolers. And he told the overseer, he saw her, he said, as long as you can keep her, you don't need one of these.
I enjoyed my work.
And how many years did you work there?
To 67?
30.
From 34 to 67? No. You quit in 65,
Yeah.
went to work for me and Pete. We moved up here in 67.
I worked there, 32 years?
Wow.
31 years.
31 years.
And was there ever talk, in all those years that you worked there, was there ever talk of trying to unionize ever again in all the years that you worked there?
No.
Not since 34, ever?
Nobody ever said anything to me about a union after that.
What would have happened if
Till they
someone
had-
brought it up?
I don't know. I think the people knew that if they
It
brought it
wouldn't
up
go.
again, that it wouldn't go, and they would lose their jobs. They just shut the mill down. See, the Linebergers pulled the strings on the mill. They did what they wanted to. They owned the mills, and you worked
You
for
can't
them.
do that today, though. You can't shut a mill down because it's unionized. It's a federal law. But they could back then.
They would have then.
Yeah.
Were the workers frightened of the owners?
No, they were, as you'd say, in a way, it was good to the people. Furnished housing, practically free. And, well, it was their only. So you didn't have to have much of an education to do textile work. Because, in fact, they used to make you come in, you called a learner. You went in and you worked practically for nothing. Anywhere
So
from
you learned the job.
till a job came open. Someone moved away or died or something like that. Sometimes 3 months. Sometimes you maybe a learner for a year.
I went in the mill and helped my mother for a year before I got a regular job.
This was in 34? Or earlier than that?
Just in, when did I go to work?
33
In
and
30,
34.
30
You went to work in 34.
Well,
You went
around
regular.
in 33, I'd go down to the mill and help Mama learn to work. And then when I got 16, they gave me a job.
What was it like inside? Could you describe it to me?
Inside the mill, it was just a lot of noise.
Terrible racket, all the
A
motors
lot of
and things.
noise.
You couldn't hear. You'd have to get closer. You already hear to speak to hear each other.
When I first went in the mill, there was no air conditioning.
Mm-mm.
Nothing. Just had these windows that raised. It was hot
And
in
a lot
there.
of lint.
A lot of lint,
People had respiratory
noise.
trouble. They couldn't work in the mill. Breathing was terrible.
Do you know a lot of the mills now have gone back to 12 hours?
No,
A lot of the mills in the
I
South.
know that.
Yeah, they've gone back to 12
12
hours.
hours?
12 hours. They're on 3 days and then they're off like
Oh.
4 days.
Oh yeah,
But it's
yeah.
hard.
Well,
Younger people could do it. I could have done it when I was that young. I did.
Yeah.
well, I could have
Because
done it. I remember when
you're-
I first went to work.
During the war, that mill ran from up to 6 o'clock Sunday morning and stopped off to 6 o'clock Sunday night. And I was a section hand on the first shift. Well, the overseer at night was off on Sunday night. So they'd have me to go in at 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon and roll up those overhead motors, well, all the motors. And then the third shift hand would come in at 6 o'clock, work to 6 in the Monday morning. Then I would go on my job at 6 o'clock Monday morning, work to 2 o'clock Monday afternoon. And it would take me 2 days to get over it. And I was young then. I was in my mid-20s.
It was hard work.
Losing my sleep what hurt me.
That's what these people are. I think that's what's so hard for a lot of these folks, particularly the women that have children, or the older
Yeah,
women who are in their 40s. And if your daddy and I were talking to each other about 1934, what do you think his first response would be?
I don't know, but he was very witty.
I don't know. He,
He'd keep you laughing.
I don't know. I just don't know what he would say. He'd probably tell you what some of the people told him. What they said, but it's like I said, he held no resentment against anybody.
Well, that's something.
Yeah,
He sure was.
he
He was a fine man.
he was just as friendly to the ones who joined the union and the ones who didn't. He was just as friendly and treated them all alike. He didn't
And
hold
he
no
treated
resentment.
me just like his own son. When they had their 50th anniversary, he got a little teed off at me because I wouldn't stand in with him when they had the family picture made. He and Ma Burke and the 3 girls and the 2 boys. Well, he just took me just right in. Right after we got married, he took me
He could-
hunting.
Considered him in the
Fishing.
family.
Of course.
Mhm.
I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe we can try and call Rune Farmer again.
Okay.
Maybe she's home.
You write her number down?
You were out.
No,
They weren't on the job. They wouldn't
Then
drink on the job.
you didn't drink on the job.
What if you drank in your house?
No.
Oh, yeah, well, that's all right. You could drink in your house.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you
I'll
could.
tell you, I've been in. Really? The superintendent wouldn't fire you?
No.
No, you could drink in your house. You could do anything in your house you
This
wanted
mic
to.
off.
No,
Is it-
it's not. It's on.
David down had him down at that big fine home out of the garage. Back then we just had old rotten gut white liquor from the mountains, you know. And he had bottled and bond. He'd give them all some of it.
Oh yeah, they had big parties. The mill owners had big parties.
Yeah.
Did they have parties for the? Did they have a party for the mill after the strike, like for the workers who didn't go out?
It was 1940 or 41 when they had that big fish fry down at the new ballpark.
Yeah, that's the first time they ever
All
had
the
it.
mills of Belmont. They had a huge fish fry
it was
because
in
your daddy
40 or
Rob helped
41.
cook them, you know.
They had all the mills together down at the ballpark,
There's a
Davis
park
ballpark.
behind the ballpark.
and they had a big fish fry for all the
Yeah,
all the
July
employees.
the 4th.
Yeah, it
On
was.
July the 4th.
Huh.
That's the first
I
time
don't
they
remember
ever.
what year it was, but I was down here then. It was
Yeah.
about 1940, 41. Of course, they didn't have it but that one year. I believe that's the reason I believe it's 41 because the war came on, you know, in December of 41.
Now like I said, I showed you the picture of that organizer in front of the Parkdale Mill.
Mm-hmm.
Now I would really like to try and find some folks who might have known him. Now maybe Vern would.
Call Bama.
I don't think
She didn't work there, but she might remember his name. Might know it. Thelma might.
I think.
You know, some people get a little nervous
Uh-huh.
when you bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
Now this Vern Farmer should know who organized down at Perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think Vern would be frightened to talk about it?
No, I don't think
I
so.
don't think so.
I don't think she would.
Would she be ashamed of her involvement?
No, I don't think
No.
so. No.
You know, some
Just don't tell her that we told you that she was involved.
Don't tell
Okay.
her. Don't tell her we told you that she was an organizer, a hip organizer.
She was on the Mill Village. She was one who went around and tried to get you to sign cards and everything,
she'd go into people's homes and go visiting and do that kind
or
of thing.
do it at the mill. Mm-hmm.
Now, why wouldn't they fire Vern? I mean, if they fired all these other people, why didn't they
Well,
fire Vern Farmer?
If they fired the head knocker, so to speak, they'd know they'd be fired for that, and they couldn't do that.
Oh,
They had to get the little guys that joined it, you know, later on. Whenever they'd get some kind of excuse about their work or laying out, something like that, you know.
no, but don't you think they could have gotten an excuse for Vern Farmer?
Mm-mm.
Well, no, she did
that
her
would have
work
been-
in the mill.
That would have been discrimination, sure enough,
Mm-hmm.
because they knew that if they fired her, there'd be a big stink raised.
Yeah, everybody knew that
They
she.
couldn't do that because they knew that she was an organizer, and they'd say that was it, and there'd be trouble for her.
I see. So she's an interesting person to talk with.
She
Yes.
will be if you can get her to talk, and I
Yeah.
think she'll talk.
I believe she will.
Yeah, I think. Just tell her what you're doing and
Oh,
tell
I
her.
will.
Uh-huh.
You know what we're trying to. You know.
And show some of those pictures.
Oh, I
you know.
will.
It's a
You know,
history of the thing.
it's a history of the thing, and also there's a lot of people who participated who no one knows a thing about. You know, I mean, they might as well be, you know, they might as well be they're dead to the world in
Yeah.
terms of anyone knowing that any of the people in these areas had ever come up to try and, you know, that some were for it or some were against it, that these people were all participants in this very big historical event. Nobody knows about it. And
And it is a piece of North Carolina history.
Well, this was kind of a national thing, a general strike called. All textile plants.
You
Now, I don't
know,
know how they were in North Massachusetts. I don't know if they did then too or not. They probably did.
oh yeah, they did.
I think that in this book in here of Dan Stowe's,
Rubber stuff.
Robert Stowe,
Uh-huh.
so I think that somewhere in that book, the strike at Firestone is mentioned, but I couldn't find
The
it.
one in 29.
But I couldn't find it. I was looking for it.
Now, did people talk about this as you were coming up? Did they refer back to 1934? Was this something that people would talk about every once in a while?
They just say, they'd be talking to somebody and they'd say something, oh, this happened during the strike. You know, something like that. They'd bring it up as during the strike.
This is changing off the subject
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
But I know you heard of the Springs cotton mills in South Carolina.
Yeah.
Elliott Springs was number 2 ace in World War II behind Rickenbacker. And the Buster Board Bridge, he was a pilot. He flew between the water and under the bridge one time. His plane. That's what kind of a daredevil he was.
That's Fort Mills, Elliott
the
Springs.
Springs.
The Springs mills,
Yeah.
they own lots of mills all over South Carolina, I would say.
Now, I happen to have